Well, hey, everybody. Thanks for checking out the Just 12 cast. My name is Jake Kirshner, the host of this podcast and also co-author of Just 12, the book. So today we're interviewing for our second podcast ever. That we're interviewing an everyday ordinary missionary. And when I say everyday ordinary missionary, it doesn't mean people we're interviewing aren't extraordinary. It doesn't mean that God doesn't give them extraordinary gifts or that he's not giving them an extraordinary way to use those gifts, or that they don't have extraordinary stories. All those things can be true. And at the same time, we know that everyday ordinary missionary, what that means is that we're all called to be on mission with Jesus. That Jesus has given us this, in our desire to follow after him and live under his rule and rescue, he's given us this passion to join him in mission and permission, not just permission, but he wants to partner with us. And so what does that look like? It means extraordinarily loving people in everyday ordinary ways, everyday ordinary encounters as we go throughout life. So I'm kind of excited about today because I think it's really fitting that we have someone who got to hear about Just 12 really while it was just a dream, while it was just an idea. And you'll recognize why, because her last name is the same as the co-author of the book, Scott Knollenberg. We have Chloe Knollenberg on with us. And so, and I'm compelled by Chloe's story because she loves church. She's known church for a long time. She's grown up in the church. She loves doing church the way that we kind of maybe know how to do church in conventional ways. She's gifted at doing it that way. And she recognizes that there's a need for change. There's a need for a Just 12 kind of approach as we move forward with our faith and as we move forward with loving others. So without spending too much more time on that, Chloe, welcome to the Just 12 cast. Thanks for sharing your story today. As you get started, just share a little bit of your context, kind of where you're at in life now. And then from what you can remember, how did you come to hear about Just 12 at the very beginning? How did you experience it? What did you think about it? How did it make you feel?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. So I am currently a college student, just finished up my freshman year. I'm a secondary math education major at a smaller Christian college in the Midwest. And yeah, so just finished up my first year. So first year went great. Obviously some adjustments, being in a new state, away from home and everything. But yeah, had an overall really positive experience there. But yeah, how I came to first hear about Just 12, being the daughter of one of the authors, I guess. Yeah, like you said, I heard about Just 12 probably about 2 or 3 years before the book was actually published. I kind of recall my dad doing some sermons at church about Just 12, and that sort of evolved into developing a curriculum actually that we did for retreats at the time down in Southern Illinois, and now currently out in Colorado. But yeah, I've been familiar with Just 12 pretty much from the beginning. And so it's kind of cool to see how it's grown from just, being talked about in sermons to, bringing people on these retreats to the book being published. And, now we have the app and the podcast. So that's been really cool to see. But, in terms of my initial reaction, I thought the concept of Just 12 was really cool. It logically made sense as, even as somebody, who's kind of been in the church world for so long.
Yeah.
But I really didn't take it that seriously, if I'm being honest, until I actually started college, this past fall. As you mentioned, in my high school years, I was really involved at my home church, middle school director, children's teaching team coordinator, co-director of VBS in the summer. So, I really enjoyed kind of being in the context that I was and having sort of this platform that the church had provided me with. But, it wasn't really until college when all of a sudden I didn't have this platform that the church had provided me with, for so many years of my life, that I really started to realize, like, wow, Just 12 really is the only thing that I can do, or really anybody can do, no matter who they are and where they're at and what stage of life they're in. So yeah, that's when I really started, taking it seriously and, prioritizing people. And even I think it's worth mentioning, even being a college student in a different state away from people, I still have, people in my 12 that are back home, and the strategy still works long distance.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're going to get to something you just hinted at there in a second. What I find compelling, and I hope people who are on this journey or starting to contemplate this journey resonate with you, is there's that gap between, hey, there seems to be only a few people who can actually be on this mission with Jesus when we think about it as those platforms, those programs, those productions that we do that can be really good and fun and powerful. There's good things that come from those, and yet it's like, boy, it's only really for a few either are gifted, which you are gifted, and enjoy it or want to do it, and like, what about the rest of us? And
Right.
I think what a few weeks ago when we were talking, what was compelling for me is that you came to that realization, like, oh, like I've had this really cool opportunity that I've been really blessed to have and excited to do. And now I'm starting to realize, like, there is a way for the rest of us when we're not doing those things. So those of us who do those things, we can still do just 12, and so can everybody else. So
Yeah.
I love that you've had that experience, because I'm guessing even those that maybe haven't had the same opportunities, but have maybe been leaders or stepped into different programs, have felt similar things to what you're talking about. So thanks for sharing that part of your journey. So tell us a little bit about, you shared a little bit like, hey, I still have people in my 12 that are back at home when I'm at school. Share a few thoughts on how you started to select your 12. How did you go about that process, and share a little bit about who's in your 12. What kind of people are in your 12? How did you go about choosing them?
Yeah, of course. So it's interesting. Actually, the other day I was kind of, unpacking from school and doing some cleaning. And I actually came across one of my old journals that kind of had my original list from, 4 or 5 years ago, who was in my 12. And I kind of laugh at it because I'm like, wow, it's changed so much, over the past 4 or 5 years. Because, when I initially kind of heard about just 12, maybe it was my freshman year of high school, I want to say, I just kind of wrote down 10 individuals, the ones that made the most sense in my mind. I wasn't really seeking kind of God's direction or will for, who was in my 12. I wasn't kind of in active communication with God, and, kind of classic God's plan versus my plan. 6 of those 10 people didn't work out. So kind of just made me realize, like, wow, I actually need to take this process a little bit more slowly and just be about who I'm praying for. And then also, being able to recognize the needs that God presents in front of me. Like, hey, there might be somebody that I didn't initially anticipate that I would put in my 12, but being open to, welcoming them into that because of, who God puts on my heart.
Yeah.
So that is interesting. So I'm, currently with that, I'm at 7 individuals, currently praying about an 8th. But in terms of who's in my 12, the first 2, obviously, my parents. I don't have siblings, as a lot of people know. So, my parents have just been 2 of my greatest role models, and they've just kind of given me my foundation for what I Christian faith as today. The third is a longtime family friend and actually our current family pastor at our church, a woman named Mary. And Mary has just really taught me, especially in my middle and high school years, kind of what it means to lead with a servant heart, right? That leadership isn't just this, this position or title that we get to have, but how do we actively meet people's needs, raise up the next generation of leaders? How can we do all that? So, always going to her too, whenever I need advice or wise counsel. We're still super close, always getting lunch, when I'm coming back home from college. So, that relationship has stayed strong despite, me being in another state.
Yeah.
And then the next 3 individuals, kind of a different group, are 3 younger friends of mine who I sort of also mentor. They're just this amazing group of sophomore students. I've just seen how God has given each of them such these very unique abilities and gifts and talents. And part of what I do is kind of working with them and teaching with them on how to apply and use those gifts kind of in the ministry setting, a little bit more of the traditional church roles that we were talking about before. And then the last individual is actually a good friend of mine who God has really put on my heart over this past year. Initially, I never really considered putting this person in my 12 before, not necessarily for any negative reason, but just the thought never really occurred to me. But just over this past school year, God's really revealed to me, like, no, you need to put this person in your 12, Chloe. Like, I want you in this person's life for a reason. So yeah, so that's been going really well, and it's been super cool to continue to build that relationship with this person and just be a part of their life.
Yeah. So I heard a couple things in there that I'm curious about. So you had said originally had this list, and there was quite a few on there, and it didn't quite work out. So I'm curious, like, how did you sense that, hey, this isn't quite working out? And then maybe part of that question is this too, of like, how did you sense that this person who wasn't on your list like you said you felt that kind of that push. Like, share a little bit about that experience for you, because I think there's a lot of people that will probably be in a similar situation where like, hey, I got my list, but are they supposed to be? Are they not supposed to be? I don't know. What am I supposed to hear? Am I supposed to hear God say it like a name? Am I supposed to, like, what's the things that were like sticking out to you and really strong indicators for you?
Yeah, so I think in terms of my original list and the people that didn't necessarily work out, God was really clear in the sense that He actually removed some of those people from my life. Some of them moving away
Yeah.
at the time. And I think, we kind of go into just 12, or when we think about people, we kind of tend to put them in certain categories. You guys talk about this in the book,
Sure.
the 4 deep wells and everything. And I think also too, I kind of had like in my mind the original intention of why I put somebody in my 12. And God kind of revealed to me like, that maybe this intention wasn't necessarily right. Like some people I had kind of labeled as, my iron sharpeners. It revealed to me that maybe those relationships shouldn't be the people that I'm, seeking this type of relationship from. So that was one of the ways of recognizing that. But yeah, in terms of the new people, it's just been little God things throughout the years. I mean, from things that I've kind of picked up in in certain texts to conversations that I've had while I'm home.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just without getting into too much
Sure. Totally.
or anything. Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
been these little things. It hasn't been some grand God moment or
Yeah.
reveal. Just these little things that I'm like, no, there's this kind of reoccurring pattern that I
Yeah.
feel like I've noticed.
That's so good. I think it's really good for people listening to hear some of those things, because there is that temptation in us to be like, what's the big thing that God's going to show me? And we see throughout scripture, even that, like from Jesus to prophets to other ones, it's like God's in the whispers. And like, what are those little whispers that are kind of just reoccurring over time that, like you said, like it's a pattern, or there's just this little thing in that text that does something within our spirits, God's spirit talking to our spirit to go, hey, what is that? And we got to pay attention to those things and be a little bit attuned to them. And so I'm excited for you to have experienced that, those little things that kind of go like, oh, God's working here and working there. And it's okay that there were people that I thought were going to be on here that aren't. This isn't a process that's in cement. It's like, no, we're in this journey trying to figure this out. So I think and have a sense that there's many people that could resonate with that and go, okay, so I don't have to have this, and maybe it will jump off the page for somebody, but I think it's more of like what you say, there's these little whispers along the way. So, I mean, that gets us a little bit into the next question I have, which is as you've experienced just 12, as you've done it over the past couple of years, what are some of the challenges that you've come across? What are some of the maybe growth areas that you've experienced? Stuff along those lines.
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge for me has really kind of seen how my 12, can it evolve when I'm going into a new context. I think going off to college was, a big piece of it. Or even, as I said, kind of people coming in and out of our lives, like how do we deal with that? We've only, in terms of Jesus's ministry, we really only see this 3-year snapshot, this kind of one period of his life where he's investing into those people. So it's interesting, we got to wonder, like, if we were looking at a different part of Jesus's life or anything, or if he if he had different disciples at a different point. So it is interesting to kind of think about, like, okay, can my 12 evolve, as I go through different stages of life? And, and I'm obviously not Jesus. I don't have the perfect answer to that, but, I would say absolutely. I think God, puts people in certain seasons of our lives for a reason, and it's okay if they're just part of that for a season. So I think coming to recognizing that, and also maybe not so much like feeling guilty, like, it was hard initially, like, wow, am I really like, taking these people off the just 12? And that doesn't mean, removing them from your life altogether. That just means,
it's great.
like, hey, I think God's wanting me to direct my focus to some different people right now. And that's absolutely okay. So
that's really good. Yeah, the directed focus. And really, this is a term that I'm using more and more often now, is it's just 12 is a narrowed relational focus. It's not about exactly getting 12 or being obsessed about those numbers and obsessed about the list. It's this sense of like, hey, we live with limited time and limited capacities, and we don't have. I mean, if Jesus, who had the capacities to do many, many things and was doing a lot of things too, preaching, healing people, but yet his major focus was very narrowed. And like you said, I'm not Jesus. I can't do the same exact things. I'm not at the end of 3 years going to get, brought into a different existence called heaven and leave my 12 behind. It's much more fluid than that. And, but it's that distinction of like, no, I have to narrow my focus. I have to really hone it in and getting a sense of who's God calling me to hone in on right now. That's really good.
Yeah.
Any other things that you were going to share about your growth or challenges?
Yeah, for sure. I think probably the biggest thing that, I mean, there's so much that can be gained from, the Just 12 framework and that concept. But I think the biggest thing, especially someone who grew up, my dad, is a pastor and everything, and just growing up in that church context. I think the biggest thing has been helping me get away from viewing people as sort of these line items on our evangelism checklist, right? I think as believers, we tend to fall into this mindset that, sharing the gospel followed by that person accepting Christ is sort of the end goal or the finish line, when in reality, that's just the starting point, right? Like, obviously salvation, accepting Christ, that's the most important decision that anybody could make, no doubt. But I think there's so much more that comes after, when somebody is saved. So just making that conscious decision to continue to be involved in or be a part of people's spiritual journey, and not just kind of throw our hands up and say, well, mission complete, when they come to accept Christ. If we're supposed to be doing life with others. And I think that just the Just 12 framework has really helped me understand and appreciate that, and just appreciate others and, in their journey and their different stages of life, and not just, viewing them as, oh, this is somebody that I shared the gospel with, or somebody that I've poured into.
Yeah, that's good. I'm like visualizing this like continuum that Just 12 can help us get into, where it's like everybody's in this space, and in that whole space, it's like, well, no, I'm discipling, I'm doing the work of loving these people like Jesus loved, and they might be here, there, or anywhere, but I'm not going to try to differentiate or say, here's where I'm trying to get them, or here's where they are right now. And obviously we want to help people move closer to loving Jesus, following him, being obedient to him. But like you said, not these like check mark steps that's like, well, I got them to there. Because sometimes, and you've experienced this and you're hinting at it, like sometimes there's either we don't invest because they're not at a certain point, or we stop investing because they reach a certain point. And it's like, let's get rid of some of those lines. And I love that you are experiencing that and sharing that with us. That's really good. Thanks for that. So when it comes to other people kind of on their journey, whatever that might be, for some people just starting out, some people are like you were, like maybe they're 2 years into this and they're trying to still figure some things out. What kind of encouragement would you have for people just starting the journey, or wherever they're at on their journey?
Yeah, the main thing I would say is just, obviously easier said than done, but, don't become discouraged if you're not seeing the results that, maybe you were initially hoping for, or, oh, I reached out to somebody and, it kind of didn't go as expected. I think that persistence is such an important part of the Just 12 journey, because, we're doing life with these people. As I said, they're not just these line items on an evangelism checklist, right? So if we're supposed to be doing life with these people, patience is required. And I think too, we have to give ourselves a little bit of a break sometimes, because as believers, we can point other people to Christ and be a reflection of his light. But ultimately, we as humans, we're incapable of bringing about the radical, heart change and transformation that only God can bring, and even First Corinthians, chapter 3, verse 7 says this. It's not important who does the planting or who does the watering. What's important is God makes the seed grow. And I take a lot of comfort in that fact, because ultimately, we just need to do what we can. We can only control our own actions. We can't control what other people do. So just take comfort in that fact. Keep going even when it seems tough, and just know that God has you in these people's lives for a reason.
Yeah, that's such a good reminder. I like, that's a good reminder for me, because it is so easy, having been a pastor, now being part of this ministry, working on my own 12, some of them being my own children, right? Like I've seen you being friends with Scott. I've seen you along your journey. And there's this piece that's like, you want something for someone, right? So badly that sometimes it's like, wait, that's not my job, right? My job is to love well. My job is to do this thing at this moment and let God do the work. And even if he does do the work, then it's easier for us to then not have to, feel like we take credit for it, right? Like, oh, I did, it's like, well, no, like along this journey, and there is a lot of relief in that. And it's a good reminder for me because there is those pieces of like, oh, so and so, it just, I wish they would have, heard this, or I wish I would have said it this way, or I could have done it this way. And it's like, well, that's getting into that mindset of trying to make something happen, trying to make someone grow versus like, yeah, like you're saying, it's God's spirit that helps people grow. That's where it comes from. So take relief in that. Thanks for that encouragement. Any stories or any other thoughts that you would want to share? Anything we missed? I was thinking about just that you had said, hey, I'm at 7, 8, and I'm still praying through those things. I would encourage our listeners, to pray for each other. And you're hinting at it, like, I'm still praying for those people, right? I know there's people that God's going to put in my path that I may have to direct some focus to. Any stories or anything else that you wanted to share with us about your Just 12 journey?
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned before, I can't emphasize enough, take it slow, like really seek God's will and God's direction for this. Obviously, we're humans. We're not going to be perfect all the time. We might overlook something that God's, planting right in front of us and everything. But yeah, just really take your time with the Just 12 process. We're, especially with American culture, we're such in the mindset of, we want things to happen immediately. And the Just 12 framework really isn't that. It's about doing life with people and being a part of their journeys for the long run, or if not, at least for a particular season. So yeah, just take your time with it, make sure you're just in active communication with God, really just seeking his direction. Pray about people, even if somebody pops into your mind and you're a little bit hesitant, like, oh, should I do it? Just pray about it. Like, just take a second and reflect, like, are there some needs that I could be meeting here? So
good. Well, thanks, Chloe. Listeners, watchers, this won't be the last time you hear and see Chloe. She has been great in helping us refine a lot of our direction, thoughts, content. So she's a part of many of the things that we're thinking through and doing. And so we've asked Chloe to be a part of other things too. So you'll see and hear from her at different points. I appreciate you, Chloe, working behind the scenes. If you're somebody that's like, man, I love being a part of Just 12, or wish I could be more a part of Just 12. There are many opportunities for people to engage that isn't necessarily just jumping on an interview. Although if you would love to share your story or like to share your story about your Just 12 journey, we have opportunities for that. So in the app, if you download the app, if you don't have it already, click on one of those, the link that says contact us. Let us know that, hey, I'd love to be interviewed, or I'd love to do this behind the scenes, or hey, how do I help support this ministry? All those are ways that you can contribute and be a part of things, and we'd love for everybody to be a part of it. So thanks for kicking us off on our first interview, Chloe. I'm looking forward to hearing people's questions about Just 12 in general, and especially the selection process and the journey. But appreciate your time and appreciate your efforts and your consistency in being part of this journey with us.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.